Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by the great folks over at Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. My name is Dave Gradrelli. I am joined by Harman Dial. No hat today. I don't know who had that on the bingo card or on their the odds, the pre-show odds of what I'll be wearing on my head, but no hat today. No hat today. We've got a few things to talk about, Harm. The game tonight is going to be the big focus. Canucks take on the Preds. We talked a lot about the Jim Rutherford stuff yesterday, so I don't think we need to revisit too much of it today. I did want to play this clip right off the top, though, because obviously the Canucks are on the road right now. There's no traveling media, but there is media in Nashville, and they got to ask JT Miller for his reaction to Jim Rutherford's comments, and we have the clip here. JT Miller's answer to the question about Jim Rutherford's comments.
To Jim Rutherford's comments yesterday or this week on the situation with you and Petey.
I don't have one.
You don't have any comments?
No.
Is there still all good between you two guys?
I'm not commenting on this.
Okay, so our thanks to Alex Doherty for asking the question and uploading the video. Don't think I expected anything different from JT Miller, but yeah, we have an answer. I wonder how it's going to go when they're in Vancouver, and obviously get questions about that, but there's your answer. Doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, like you, I'm unsurprised. I expected Miller to have this type of response. What I will say is the biggest surprise for me has been on social media seeing the reaction to this clip and how many people are blaming this reporter for asking the question. And this idea that, oh, why don't you just put this narrative to bed? The president of hockey operations came out yesterday and basically confirmed that this is a thing. The only reason this topic continually comes up is because it's now a proven problem, and it's gotten to the point where the president of hockey ops has literally said he may have to blow up the core and trade these guys away because of the issue. Like, this is the biggest story in the NHL right now. I don't understand the flack that Alex got for asking that question.
No, seriously, our thanks to Alex for asking that question. And I mean, like, I hope they're listening to this, because the questions aren't going to be, what's your reaction? It's going to be, hey, the president of hockey ops is on the record saying that this rift between you and Petey has caused problems for the entire team this season. Do you think that's a fair comment? Or do you think that's your perspective on it? Like, what is your perspective on this? Like, those are going to be the questions that are asked. It's not unfair to ask about this. It's just not. Yeah, I personally, I haven't seen anybody blaming the reporter, but I also don't spend enough time on social media, apparently.
Well, the missing curfew podcast tweeted it, and
you mean the podcast, the social media platform that doesn't actually have any people that are in rooms asking questions, but feed off content from reporters asking questions? That podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. Just clarifying.
Well, also not just them. There were a lot of fans underneath, both Canucks fans and out-of-market fans that seem to agree with that perspective and thought it was a dumb question to ask.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to pick on missing curfew. I have no bone to pick with those guys. Trust me. But it's more of a... I've had a gripe for a while with these, and I'm not going to start listing outlets and stuff, but these media, quote-unquote, pages and stuff that live off of the content that comes out of the rooms, comes out of reporters asking questions, and then have the audacity to be like, what a dumb question. It's like, go ahead, show us how it's done. Like, show us how it's done. Anyways, got a little personal for me there when you brought that up. But anyways, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that kind of content. I really don't. So, yeah, shout out to Missing Curfew. Okay. Oh no. Jacob's in our private chat saying Mark Spector had the exact same take as me. Is that true?
Yes, it is. I saw.
What do you mean?
Spector, he go and look at his tweet. It was exactly what you said.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It almost is word for word. So this is what Spec said. Can only laugh when sites like this one, not a website, I didn't call it a site, sites like this one that exist off of quotes and stories generated by reporters asking questions, dump on reporters for asking questions. Come to the room yourself then, boys. Show us how it's done, is what he said. Wow. That, you know, that meme, heartbreaking, the worst person you know just made a great point. That's how I'm feeling right now. And I have nothing against Mark Spector, but yeah, Mark Spector.
Spec, honestly, I understand why he gets some flack for his hockey takes. I certainly don't agree with a lot of his hockey takes, but as a dude, just like hanging around him a lot, through the playoff series in Edmonton and whatnot, like he is a really down to earth, good guy, like way better than you'd think based off his hockey takes and in his social media presence.
Perfect. All right. Well, good to know. I hope you say the same things about me. Because I have the same take as Mark Spector. Sorry, that really threw me off to start the show today. Really threw me off to have the exact same take as Mark Spector. Okay, moving on. Chad's bumping early. Chat liked that one a lot. Hot start to the show today. Let's talk about our Super Chat charity partner this season, the BC Mental Health Foundation. You want to make sure your question or comment gets on the show. Hit us with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. Okay. Canucks are in Nashville tonight, Harm. They are looking to make it 3 straight wins. A really solid performance against the St. Louis Blues. And we're going to talk about the Blues a little bit later. We have some NHL news and notes that I want to get to, and the Blues are at the forefront of that. But Canucks, Predators tonight, for me, the big news, Dakota Joshua returns to the lineup tonight. Kiefer Sherwood has been placed on IR to clear the way for Joshua. So not great news that Kiefer Sherwood is going to be out for a little bit longer than maybe we originally thought. But we haven't yet gotten an indication of how long it's going to be for Sherwood, if memory serves, right?
I don't think like a clear timeline, but I also haven't gotten, I don't think there's been reporting that it's really serious.
Okay. Let's hope it's not really serious because this lineup needs Kiefer Sherwood in it. So Sherwood placed on IR. Dakota Joshua returns tonight. They would have had to make a roster move to do that and bring Noah Juulsen back, which it sounds like Noah Juulsen slotting back in. And obviously the big question for me is it going to be Elias Pettersson? Is his cup of coffee in the NHL over? It doesn't look like that's the case. It looks like it's Max Sasson that is going down to the minors. I like Max Sasson too, but it looks like he's going back down to AHL Abbotsford. Canucks keeping Elias Pettersson up here. Look, Harm, if Noah Juulsen's back tonight, the big thing I want to say is Elias Pettersson needs to stay in the lineup. Figure it out. Find a way to keep him in the lineup. I need me some DP to keep him in the lineup. And Wiley Canuck on Twitter tweeted this out as well. He said, Canucks with Juulsen in the lineup, 3 wins, 14 losses, and 7 overtime losses. Canucks without Juulsen in the lineup, 19 wins, 3 losses, 3 overtime losses. Those numbers really don't lie.
Dark?
Those are real numbers. I looked
those are real?
Those are real. Those are real. Someone tell me if I'm wrong. I saw someone else tweet that they were real.
That is so lopsided that it's like hard to believe.
Yes, I got tagged in it by a few people because believe it or not, there was a time when I really liked Noah Juulsen. But yes. Oh no, it's not that bad.
I was gonna say like that.
Wait, hang on. No. He didn't. Okay, he did make up those numbers, but these are the real numbers. He didn't even have to make them up to make the tweet funny. Here's the real numbers. Scratch all that. I apologize. Wiley Canuck's a good troll sometimes. Okay, here's the real numbers. 11 wins with Juulsen. 11 wins, 13 losses, 8 overtime losses. Without Juulsen, 11 wins, 4 losses, 2 overtime losses. So, like, he made it up, but the point stands, and the real numbers aren't much better.
Yeah, and I was going to say, to me, given how well the bottom 4 looked, like as a 6-man unit, that was, against St. Louis, one of the best games that the Canucks have gotten from their blue line overall. The Soucy-Pettersson pair held their own from a possession and scoring chance standpoint. The Forbert-Hronek pair wasn't on the ice for a single high-danger chance against at 5-on-5. Hughes and Myers were terrific together. Now, again, context matters. The Blues played one of their worst games of the season. They're in a state of disarray. But I don't look at Noah Juulsen as a piece that you need in the lineup. I get it. He's a good penalty killer. But with how well I thought DPD looked through the first 2 games, and again, he's raw. I'm not saying he's perfect. He's still a defenseman that you need to shelter. But Juulsen has largely been a liability to even strength this year.
Calcio Rico in the chat said, I understand that DPD had much softer deployment than Juleson has had, but being a massive liability at 5-on-5 cannot be worth the penalty killing upside. I absolutely agree. And another good comment from Calcio Rico saying, keep D undefeated in the lineup. 2-0. Canucks remain undefeated with Elias Pettersson in the lineup. Keep him in. Keep him in. I want to see him stay in this lineup. I want to touch on the Dakota Joshua angle on all of this, Harm. He obviously had a late start to his season after the cancer diagnosis and cancer surgery that he had to have, and you felt for him big time, and it really took him a while to get his feet under him. And if memory serves, it felt like the week that he was just starting to look like the Dakota Joshua of old is when he suffers this injury, and now it feels like he has to start from square one again. You're hoping that it's a quick turnaround for Joshua in terms of being able to find his game again, because he did really start to look like he was putting it together almost right when he went down with his second injury.
Yeah, you started to see the physicality ramp up. You started to see him winning battles, being more assertive along the walls. He looked quicker, right? As far as how little time opposing defensemen seemed to have when Joshua was bearing down as the first or second man in on the forecheck. He was, I think, involved in generating more scoring chances. He was just more noticeable out there. When he first drew back into the lineup, understandably, given how much time he had missed, not having training camp, missed regular season games, he looked invisible for stretches. He didn't look as imposing, as assertive. And right before he went down with injury over the last week, it wasn't just even by the eye that he looked a lot more impactful. The underlying numbers showed that he was driving really strong two-way results. So you're hoping that there isn't too much of a lag period for Joshua to get back to where he was just prior to this most recent injury.
Yeah, absolutely. You wish all the best for Dakota Joshua. Really hope he's able to put it together quick. Hope it's going to be a quick one for Joshua. Okay. What else do we have on the game? Noah Jolson could slot back in. I hope he doesn't, but he might. We will see. We don't know what the lineup's going to look like tonight. All that Talkit would confirm is that Dakota Joshua is in the lineup. Aatu Ratu was called up. He's red hot right now. I think 15 points in his last 9 games or 10 games. He's been playing great down in Abbotsford. Doesn't look like he's going to get in, but he is called up. So we will see if he gets in the lineup. Again, optional morning skate for the Canucks today, and no media on the road. So not a ton of info coming out, but we do know Demko starts, Joshua in tonight against the Preds. And I just touched on it there. Thatcher Demko starts for the Canucks tonight against the Predators. Demko's won just one of his last 7 starts. He's got 16 goals allowed in his last 4 starts. And Harmon, after the 5-1 loss to the LA Kings, where the Canucks looked listless, it was the JT Miller bench game. Well, I guess the second one of the season, but a game where JT Miller had his ice time limited. I asked Rick Tocchet about Thatcher Demko post-game, and Tocchet's answer to me was, and all I said was just, like, where do you think his game is at right now? Because I didn't think it was a great night for Demko. And Tocchet then gave the quote of, we got to get him on a roll. We got to get him on a bit of a run. Demko then started the next 3 games, and that run wasn't good. And then Lankinen got in, and I thought we were going to see Lankinen again tonight. I really did, but look, I've explained this to people before with the idea that you need to have an idea of what you're doing next season, and I believe that the Canucks probably think the best way for them to compete next year is for Thatcher Demko to bounce back and be a Vezina caliber netminder next season. We don't know if they're going to sign Kevin Lankinen to an extension. We have a lot of people that say, no, keep Lankinen. And then we say, okay, well, here's what the goalie market, the free agent goalie market, is suggesting that Lankinen's going to need to get paid. And they say, no, that's way too much. It's like, okay, well, you can't have both. You have to figure out what path you're going down and make a decision. And if the decision the Canucks are making is that Thatcher Demko is their guy next year, they need to get him into games now. You can't just ride Lankinen down the stretch, have Thatcher Demko be a traditional backup for you, and then say, okay, now go be our Vezina guy next year. That's not how this works. It's not. So while I'm surprised Lankinen starts, I understand the thought process as well.
Well, even if it's a case where you're not where you're not even entirely convinced that you can lean on Demko to be the guy for next season, ultimately you need to make the most informed decision as possible if you're Canucks management. And that decision has to come down by the offseason at the latest, right? Because you're going to have to make a decision on what to do with Lankinen. And you don't want to have a scenario like you want to have a large enough sample size to know where Demko is at with his game. And especially considering the unprecedented injury he's off of, you don't want to run into a scenario where, let's say, he struggles down the stretch here, but you maybe didn't give him enough of a run of games to be confident that you think he's cooked. And then you move him in the offseason, he goes elsewhere and thrives as a starter again. Like that would really come back to bite this franchise. So it is a balancing act, right? Because let's be honest, Lankinen gives them the best chance to win right now. They need all the points they can get, but I also don't think this is a bad idea because it sort of accomplishes two things, right? Like one, it helps you have a clearer idea of Demko's status and making a more informed decision long term. But also, you don't want to play the wheels off Lankinen. He's not a guy that's played 50 games in a season before. So managing his workload and making sure that he's not too fatigued and that you're not leaning on him too heavily is important as well.
And I wonder, there's people in the chat with some theories. I wonder if they try to go back to a 1 game each rotation. Obviously, Lankinen got the last 2. I think I would have maybe gone to Lankinen tonight for also the reason that it's his former team in the Nashville Predators. Probably wanted to play this game in Nashville, but he's already played against the Predators this season. So I'm not saying like, oh, they wronged him. I maybe would have started him in this game is all. They've got Dallas on the 31st, Friday. So people are bringing up the idea of, okay, well, if you don't want to start Lankinen in 4 straight games, which is what it would have been had he started tonight and then had he started Dallas, starting Demko against an offensively challenged team is smart, IMO, in my opinion.
Well,
said Karn in the chat.
One thing I will say is the Preds are the highest scoring team in the NHL since Jan 1. So yeah, they've been offensively challenged for most of this season, but since the calendar has flipped to 2025, they've been shooting the lights out.
Since when? What the hell?
I wrote a Preds piece, and it's like Marchessault and Stamkos have been red hot. Forsberg has been on an absolute tear. Their power play has been really productive.
Oh my gosh, these are high-scoring games they're playing.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. They haven't necessarily like won all of them. They're coming off a loss to the Anaheim Ducks, but the score was 5-2, and then they won 6-5 against San Jose Sharks, 7-5 against the San Jose Sharks, 6-2
they've won
win. Holy
5
smokes.
of the last 6.
Yeah.
And I'll pull up the exact numbers to give context, but
also
yeah,
let's be clear, the one came against the Anaheim Ducks.
I mean, no doubt they've had a favorable week second half schedule, but yeah, I mean, since Jan 1, they're 7-3, averaging 3.8 goals per game. It's not just number 1 in the NHL; it's number 1 by a lot.
People say, I guess Claus doesn't read Harmon's work. I don't have time to read everything, but we read each other's work. I help you with headlines. That's where I come in. That's what we like to do together. Okay, I honestly didn't know they were on a hot streak. I'll be honest with you. I mean, probably clear to all the listeners right now, but yeah, I genuinely didn't know Nashville's on a hot streak. So as we talk about this game, Harm, what can the Canucks expect from the Nashville Predators tonight?
It's been the top line of Stamkos, Marchessault, and Forsberg that's on a bit of a bender, right? Because a huge part of why the Predators struggled so much offensively through the first 30, 35 games or so is because they were in a spot where, I mean, first of all, their top 6 group is pretty old and slow, but also it was a situation where they just had no quality centers and too many like pure snipers. Didn't have any playmakers through the middle of the ice who could set guys like Stamkos and Marchessault up in scoring positions. And so in December, Andrew Burnett decided to shift Stamkos from wing to center. Now, Stamkos has played most of the tail end of his career in Tampa on the wing. So moving him to center at the age of 34 was kind of like a Hail Mary last-ditch attempt. And so they shifted him to top-line center with Forsberg, with Marchessault. It's panned out really well. Both those guys are red hot now. I don't think it's sustainable long term because you look at their underlying numbers together, they're on a PDO bender. They're getting offensive bounces. From a play controlling perspective, they only control about 46% of 5-on-5 shot attempts. So while they are feeling it, this isn't a case of, oh, Nashville has figured it out and Stamkos at nearly 35 years old, which he's going to turn in February, is now their long-term 1C. They've just sort of found a band-aid solution that works. They're also playing against weaker opponents for most of January, which has coincided with when they've been on this offensive tear. Their power play has really started becoming productive. So from the Canucks standpoint, just keeping that Nashville top line in check is going to be the biggest challenge. And ultimately, that's what I said the last time these two teams met too, is if you can keep the Stamkos line off the score sheet, you've got a good chance of winning. And in that game, I mean, the Canucks got shut out if memory serves, so it wouldn't have mattered anyway, but they got burned by that Stamkos line scoring against them. So it's really, as long as you're able to shut down those top guys, the Preds don't have a lot of secondary scoring. And they also have to make sure that they don't take too many undisciplined penalties because their man advantage is rolling right now.
Let's see if Tyler Myers can keep this up. That's my X factor for tonight's game. Can Tyler Myers put in 2 Calder-like performances back to back? Let's get to our poll question, which is brought to you by HSBC World Rugby Sevens. This poll question is brought to you by HSBC Vancouver Sevens, where high caliber rugby and the ultimate party weekend collide. SVNS is Western Canada's largest sporting event, and this year is the 10th anniversary of the event. From February 21st to 23rd, BC Place is the place to be. Grab your friends and your best costume and come on down for the best party in town. Tickets are on sale now at vansevens.com, starting from just $45 per day. Check them out. Happy to have Vancouver Sevens back on the show. Our poll question today, let's bring it up. It's about the goaltending decision. Do you agree with the Canucks' decision to start Thatcher Demko over Kevin Lankinen versus the Predators tonight? Harm, 43.4% of voters say yes, 56.6% say no. The majority of Canucks fans would like to see Kevin Lankinen get the start tonight instead of Thatcher Demko. I just said this. I don't have a super hard take on this. I probably would have gone to Lankinen, but I also understand the thought process of going to Demko tonight.
Yeah, I'm sort of there where I could have understood the decision either way. If they had went with Lankinen for three straight, I would have been like, of course, that maximizes your odds of winning this game specifically. But in the grand scheme of things, you would have needed to give Lankinen, like if not the Nashville game, you probably would have given Demko the Dallas game anyway. And so to me, it wouldn't have made much of a difference if you start Demko tonight, if you start Lankinen tonight, because ultimately when I look at the next 2 games, tonight against Nashville and Friday against Dallas, in my mind, one of those games should have gone to Lankinen and one of those games should have gone to Demko. And regardless of how well Demko plays, I'm expecting them to go back to Lankinen on Friday. And what I will say regarding the bigger picture deployment, right? Because some will wonder, okay, are they just going to alternate starts now? I think you can't get to that point. You still have to treat Lankinen like the 1A and give him more starts than Demko until Demko actually shows that he deserves more starts, right? Like that's an important distinction to make too, is when I sit here and say, I don't mind them turning to Thatcher Demko tonight, that's not me saying I think it should be a 50-50 rotation between Lankinen and Demko down the stretch. Demko is the 1B right now. Lankinen deserves a greater share of the starts. My point is just, you don't want Demko in a situation where he's playing 1 out of like every 5 or 6 games, especially because if you ride Lankinen that heavily, I would begin to worry if the workload would catch up to him and detrimentally impact his performance.
I think that's fair. I think that's a good way to put it, especially when this team has hopes of making the playoffs, right? So, yeah, that was our poll question. It was brought to you by Vancouver Sevens. Go check them out, vansevens.com. Ticket start just $45 per day. Okay, Harm, there's some news and there's some notes around the National Hockey League that I want to get into. I watched a game last night, Harm. I watched a non-Canucks game. I like to talk about that when I do, and when it's a good one. And last night was a good one between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Dallas Stars. I was going to save this for anyone else. We're going to talk about the Blues, but this clip of Mark Stone, and I'm sure you've seen it by now, Mark Stone just launching himself into Miro Heiskanen's leg. He was assessed a tripping minor on the play, I believe, but Heiskanen heads right to the locker room after that play. There was people that were pointing out that Roope Hintz maybe tripped Stone a little bit here and got his stick into Stone's skates, but like Stone still did kind of throw his weight into Heiskanen's leg. No supplemental discipline, I don't think, for that one, but it was still a play that I did not like to see on Heiskanen.
Yeah, I saw the replay of Stone getting tripped by Hintz, which I think is crucial context. But I'm right with you where this wasn't he gets tripped and ends up colliding with Heiskanen. It gets tripped and it feels like he still launches himself into Heiskanen's leg. And look, this isn't soccer, right? This isn't soccer where if you get the ball first, you're allowed to slide tackle the guy, right? In hockey, it doesn't matter if you get the puck first, which Stone was kind of like diving towards the puck. You just straight up can't take a guy's legs out like that. And so to me, regardless of him being tripped, I thought that was a dirty play. I thought it was reckless. And if I was a Dallas Stars fan, I would be furious, especially because these two teams have history in the playoffs, right? Last year's 7-game series. It's not hard to put 1 and 1 together and think that, okay, even though Mark Stone doesn't have a history of being a dirty player, that there could have been some intent to injure here.
Non-dirty players, clean players, let's call them, can still make dirty plays. Like let's call a spade a spade. That is a dirty play in my mind. You're launching yourself into a guy's legs, even if you got tripped. Like you said, you're reaching for the puck. Like for sure, that's his defense. As I was trying to make a play on the puck, but that is an idiotic play to make. And I mean, Ray Ferraro was saying the same thing on the broadcast last night. Shout out to Ray. Nice to hear him on those ESPN nationally televised games. That was good. It was a really good one last night. And I don't know if you watched the overtime sequence, but Jake Ottinger makes a fantastic save on a partial breakaway at one end, sends his team the other way, and they finish it off on a 2-on-1. It was a great game, and it had a great finish in that overtime sequence. And it was one of those overtimes where it was not too much holding onto the puck. It was just back and forth chances. And in my mind, like that's how overtime's meant to be played. I love seeing games like that. So shout out to the Stars, shout out to the Golden Knights. It was a really good game between the two teams last night. Really liked what I saw from them.
I would love to see those two teams meet again in the playoffs.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, some more news throughout this. And I should also tell you, because I forgot to, that this segment of our show is brought to you by Pacific Toyota dealers, who want to tell you about 100% electric Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X is packed with all the things you want in an SUV, like the room to fit all your family, friends, hockey bags, and whatever else you've got. And of course, the BZ4X is backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $12,500 in rebates and incentives. And now you can finance a 2024 BZ4X from 0.19% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Okay, Harm. I'm sure you saw this, but Brandon Saad placed on waivers yesterday. He clears waivers today. Shortly after that, Sportsnet Elliot Friedman reports that they have mutually decided to part ways. Saad and the Blues, they are mutually terminating the contract. Saad's 32 years old. Okay, he scored 26 goals just last season, but he's only up to 16 points through 43 games this year. Your thoughts on Brandon Saad? I'm not even going to ask you like, oh, should the Canucks go out and target this guy? Just your thoughts on Brandon Saad, the player.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't watched him too closely this year. I know that his two-way play driving metrics have fallen off pretty precipitously here. I know that he's really struggled. I still think he's capable of chipping in and helping other teams. Bottom six, he's experienced. He can slide up the lineup in case of injuries. But for the Blues, I mean, my biggest takeaway just seeing that was how lucky are they to get out of that cap hit. Now they've got some room opened up, and we know how aggressive Doug Armstrong likes to be. It's just a huge win for the Blues from the perspective of now you're off the contract.
I'm going to give you a team that I just look at, and the contract you're talking about, there was this year and 1 year after this at $4.5 million. Edmonton Oilers. I think the Edmonton Oilers could use Brandon Saad. I'm going to throw that out there. If I'm making a prediction, the Oilers sign Brandon Saad. I look at their winger depth. We've talked a lot about how great Leon Draisaitl is this year and how he has Vasily Podkolzin as a winger, as his most common winger. And Podkolzin's had a fine year, but I think if you give Brandon Saad the minutes that Podkolzin's been getting with Leon Draisaitl, I think the results are better for Brandon Saad. Disagree? Agree? What do you think? The Oilers jump out at me as the team that should sign him.
I'd have to think about that. I'll be honest. I don't love the idea of, if you're Edmonton, banking on Saad to play a high-profile role on a contending team.
They're trusting Bud Colson right now.
But look, for what he is, he's been fine. Like, he's just a guy who can get in on the forecheck, win puck battles, help from a two-way perspective. Yeah, he's not going to score a lot, but I haven't seen too many. I haven't seen many Oilers fans complaining about that necessarily. And honestly, the bigger problem for Edmonton is that Jeff Skinner has been a bust. Plus, they're also getting, like, I don't even know what's going to happen with Evander Kane, right? At what point are they going to get him back? What expectations do they have for the type of role that he could occupy? I'll be honest, I don't necessarily look at Saad as, like, I could see Edmonton maybe needing another piece up front. I don't think Saad, based off how he's performed this season, is a high-end enough answer to, like, I don't think he's enough of an upgrade, if that makes sense. Like, I get your rationale that in a perfect world, you don't want Podkolzin and playing as often on the second line as he has been, but Saad's really struggled this year, and I'm not saying I strongly disagree with your take, but I don't look at it as a slam dunk necessarily.
Is there a team that strikes you as a team that should be interested in Saad? Should the Canucks be interested in Brendan Saad?
No, I don't think the Canucks should be interested in Saad. I'll be honest. I haven't looked around the league and dissected every contender's winger depth and which teams could be best fits for Saad.
Just look at the logos. That's how I decide. Okay, so Brendan Saad, yes, mutually terminated that contract with the Blues today, so certainly some news there. I wanted to talk about the Canucks aspect of all of this, that, hey, when was the last time the Canucks helped the Blues reach rock bottom? If memory serves, it was the year that they won the Cup. I was trying, and I should have had it prepared, but I was going to go back and look at how that game went. But you'll recall the Canucks beat the Blues. The Blues are way out of the playoff picture at that point. Robert Bortuzzo fights a teammate in practice the next day. The Blues go on a spike, a huge upward trajectory. They go on to win the Stanley Cup that season. The Blues were broken by the Canucks in that year. The Canucks' 5-2 victory on Monday night seems to have helped the Blues reach rock bottom at this point of their season. Will they go on to win a cup this year? Remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. But some action in St. Louis.
They have
Canucks win over the Blues. Excuse me.
Dom's model has the Blues having better odds of winning the number one pick than of making the playoffs at this point.
Aren't they not that far out?
They're so yeah, but they're a mediocre team, man.
Like, they have to hop over the Canucks. They have to hop over the Flames.
They're also just mediocre, man. Like, that blue line is,
as we saw, they played poorly on Monday.
Is so mid. Do
you take it over the Canucks blue line?
No. The Canucks have Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, because of Quinn Hughes.
But yeah, I mean, the Blues are kind of, they're screwed. I mean, the thing to keep in mind about the 2018 or 2019 turnaround for the Blues was, before the season started, they'd made the O'Reilly trade. On paper, everybody looked at them, especially based off their underlying metrics, as, okay, this team should be a cup contender. And then it was just, they had a disastrous first half, and they finally played up to their potential. Whereas this version of the Blues, their potential is exactly what they are right now, which is a middle of the pack team that is probably going to finish like 10th in the West.
I was looking at their numbers. Leading their team in points is Jordan Kyrou. Dylan Holloway's really come alive. I think it's worth mentioning that. Dylan Holloway's on a hot streak right now. This month of January has been very, very kind to Dylan Holloway. He's looking like a real player there, a real threat on the power play, especially as we saw on Monday night. But Jordan Kyrou, he's expected to lead this team 42 points through 51 games. And that would obviously lead the Canucks in points. So there's that, but you're right. I would expect more from this team. Robert Thomas, same sort of thing. He's only played 39 games. He's at 36 points, but it looks like a lot of the players that they expected to have big years just haven't even shown up this year.
Yeah, I just don't think their core is good enough, and it's unfortunate because the Broberg and Holloway offer sheets have worked out literally as well as anybody could have expected. And by the way, Holloway at the cap hit that he's on right now. Can you imagine if the Oilers had kept him instead of investing, say, like $3 million in Jeff Skinner?
And I mean, we were talking about it when it happened, that was the offer sheet that the Oilers should have matched, right? Like that, they didn't match either, but we were saying, yeah, don't match Broberg, match Holloway. So, yeah, that's a big blow for them. But who gives a crap on this show?
Yeah, like Kessler Ring, Holloway, like they've honestly, their biggest needs right now, they've kind of internally had the pieces there to address them and just kind of like fumbled them and lost them, which is pretty funny.
Okay. Let's get to anyone else because there's some stuff in the chat right now. Jacob, if you can find the comment, someone made a comment about Tage Thompson and JJ Peterka. I want to get to that. It has some stuff to do with around the league, but is there any other NHL notes that I've missed, Harm? I want to get to this 7-2 Sabres win over the Bruins. We're going to get to that and anyone else. But is there anything else that you noticed, like waiver wire stuff or anything you wanted to get to?
Just Grubauer was on waivers.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about this.
Shock.
His cap is still really high, right?
Yeah.
How many years does he have left? Oh my gosh. Okay, this is year 4 of 6. It's going to expire at the end of the 26-27 season. $5.9 million cap hit for Philip Grubauer, who has been categorically unplayable for the Kraken. It's the reason that Joey Daccord has played as much as he had. Like, Joey Daccord is playing back-to-backs. Joey Daccord is playing every game for the Kraken right now. Damn, we should have asked John Forsland about that when we had him on the show, but we'll have him back. John was a great guest on Monday's episode. But yes, Philip Grubauer plays last night and allows 5 goals on 22 shots for a .773 save percentage. Harm, I'll give you his last 4 starts save percentage, okay? .773, .250, .737, .897. He has been unplayable, and the Kraken decided basically in mid-January not to play him anymore, gave him the start against the Anaheim Ducks, and he fumbled that opportunity, and now it's over. Now he's on waivers.
It was a disaster contract from the moment it was signed. I believe he has a $5.9 million cap hit. And this is what happens, right? When you make a sizable bet on a goaltender with a really small sample size of success.
Lesson there for the Canucks?
I mean, yeah, lesson for teams in general about like how many times have we been beating the drum when you look at Grubauer, when you look at Tristan Jarry, when you look at, I know Kemper's bounced back now, but he was a problem contract for the Capitals. He had lost the starting job, and they needed to ship him out as part of the Dubois deal. Just there are so many examples around the league. Philly Husso of you give a major cap hit to an unproven goaltender, and it bites you in the ass. I mean, Jack Campbell, the examples just go on and on and on. Whereas if you ask yourself how many examples are there of these like 1A type goaltenders that teams bet on who have had success, I'm sure there are some out there, but I'd argue the risk to reward equation just doesn't make sense.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Goaltending is funny that way. But it's topical because we were just talking about Lankinen. We were just talking about Demko. And deciding how you're going to move forward, really. Let's get to anyone else, which is presented by Greta, a great spot for all games, home and away, the home of our electric watch parties. Greta is a great spot to be, and we hope to see you all for our watch parties all season long. But even if we're not there, you certainly should be just minutes from the arena. Come by before and after the game or whatever event you're downtown for. With arcade games, weekly drink specials, and the recently updated street food menu, Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Join us for the Four Nations game, Canada versus USA. That one's going to be at Greta. I believe Sakaris and Price are hosting that one, which is going to be a lot of fun. Saturday, February 15th. Tickets are $10. Nationgear.ca. Doors open at 4. Puck drop is at 5 p.m. This event is presented by Fountain Tire. Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into a few things here. 7-2 victory for the Buffalo Sabres over the Boston Bruins last night. JJ Peterka and Tage Thompson each get a hat trick. And Nikita Zadorov, gets a 10-minute misconduct. I didn't watch this game. Did you catch? I didn't even catch highlights.
No, I was busy writing. I did have a Sabres discussion point that I want to talk about, because I know there's been a lot of conversation around the idea of trading Elias Pettersson lately, and you and I have generally agreed that Canucks are probably better off keeping him. But one realization that I had, right, is initially there was a lot of discussion around the idea of Cousins and Byram, and I said I'm not a big fan of that idea. The guy to get from Buffalo is Owen Power. And initially, when we were having these, if you go down that road of trading Pettersson, now, I initially didn't even think Power would be available, right, given his stature, former number 1 pick. But seeing Sabres fans talk about Power's situation, and obviously how many defensemen they have stocked on the left side of the blue line, as well as like even our athletic colleague that covers the Sabres, Matthew Fairburn, he didn't rule out the idea of throwing Power into a potential proposal for Elias Pettersson. And to me, if it's now Power and Cousins, like that's way more appealing to me than Byram being part of that, for a number of reasons. First of all, Power is younger than Byram. He has legit star potential. We're talking about a guy that was number 1 overall pick. Yeah, he's had a bit of a down year defensively, and he's on a big contract that pays him, I believe, an $8.35 million cap hit. But I sort of asked around, like an exec based out of the Eastern Conference, like, what do you think of Owen Power? What type of ceiling does he have? And this person told me that Power, in his mind, has shades of potentially developing into a Werenski or Bouchard type defenseman, right? And so if you're talking about a guy who could be, like, let's call it a number 2, like an excellent number 2 behind Quinn Hughes, and you can also get a Dylan Cousins back, like that's all of a sudden, I still wouldn't trade Pettersson. And the person that I was talking to still said, I would hang on to Pettersson as much as I love Power. But if the Canucks are dead set on trading Pettersson, like that to me is your best shot of recouping close to full value, is getting Owen Power in that type of deal.
Kevin Adams' botched State of the Union that we talked about a few months back, Harm, one of the topics he talked about was Owen Power. And he talked about Owen Power in the sense of, we're trying to get him to learn to defend. My opinion on Owen Power is he is the defenseman that people thought Quinn Hughes was. People that haven't watched Quinn Hughes think Quinn Hughes was back in the day, when they was, he's really good offensively, but he can't defend. Explain to me, do you think Owen Power can learn the defensive side of the game? Because that's been the big criticism out of Buffalo so far.
He's 22, so he's still really young.
He's also 6'6", which I didn't know. So obviously I'm on board.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I don't think he's ever going to be above average defensively. I'll put it like that. But could he get to a point where he's competent defensively and can be like a legit number 2 defenseman in the NHL? Absolutely. Here's the thing is, people look at him at 6'6" and think that he should be like a Zdeno Chara type player. That's not him stylistically at all. He's a guy that likes to rush the puck. He's a guy that will help you on breakouts, which is what this team kind of needs. A guy that can activate in the offensive zone. He's not ever going to be as physical or defensively imposing as Zdeno Chara. He's just an offensive defenseman who skates really well and can make a lot of plays in the body of Zdeno Chara. Now that's still a special player. That's a player with star upside. And so, yeah, I still believe that that he can learn the defensive side of the game, at least to the point where he'd be competent. And again, to clarify, if you ask me today, would I straight up do Pettersson for Power and Cousins? I would still lean towards no, because Power and Cousins combined are, I think, over 15 million against the cap. Like, I don't love the bang for buck you're necessarily getting on those contracts, especially for Cousins. But if management reaches the point where they go, where they've just decided we're going to trade Pedersen and we're not changing our mind, then in my mind, a package like that is your best chance of getting close to full value.
Can't teach size. Can't teach size. You can teach defense. You can't teach size.
And again, the key point is, like, I just think the idea of power is so much more appealing than Byram.
Absolutely.
Especially, again, because of Byram's, like, the injury risk and concussions, head injuries. With power, you have none of those, and he's younger, he's bigger, he has higher upside. Like that, that at least makes it a conversation. Whereas initially, the idea of Cousins and Byram, I just, that's not appealing to me.
And you did a good job pointing that out the other day. It was good. Okay. This one for Jacob, just put this in our private chat. Per Frank Saravalli, final 3 options for Utah's name: Utah, HC, Mammoth, and Wasatch. What?
It is a mountain range in Utah.
Those cannot be the final.
Those are the
options.
finalists.
Are you sure Frank didn't get hacked? Are you joking?
Oh no, it's on the Daily Face-Off site right now as well. Utah Hockey Club's new names to be decided by fan vote, down to 3 options. Final 3 names: Utah HC, Utah Mammoth, Utah Wasatch. All I'm gonna say is it better be Mammoth, and that's not even a good name.
Yeah.
What happened to Yetis or Yeti?
They got into trademark issues with the Yeti cooler brand.
Oh,
So
I love
the
Yeti
US
too. I
So
do
the
love
U.S.
Yeti.
Trademark Office wouldn't grant them a trademark for Utah Yeti.
They'd have to do the Golden Knights thing. Go Blue Yetis. Blue Yeti or whatever.
Yeah, don't do Wasatch or whatever that is. Like, that's the first time
hell
I'm
is
hearing that
Wasatch?
too.
I thought that was a typo. And you can't just go Utah HC. Okay, so it's
I
Mammoth.
was like, was Jacob trying to type in Sasquatch and just like like spelt it wrong, and there was some weird autocorrect?
I know. That's why I asked Jacob to clarify.
A hockey club is just like, you can't do that. That's
No, so it's going to be Mammoth. Let's just cut to the chase here. It's a fan vote. I hope other teams' fan bases can't vote, because then they will end up being called the Wasatch or whatever the hell that means. Yeah, it's going to be Mammoth. It's obviously going to be Mammoth. I don't even know why they did a vote. Like, that makes no sense to me. It's just, maybe they're just hoping that their fan base will just clearly see that one of these names makes sense and is a good name and the other 2 are just bad, and they'll just pick the good one. We'll see. But it looks like it's going to be Mammoth, you would think.
you would hope and
You
pray.
would hope. Yeah. Nar asks this: why doesn't Frank Daddy come on the pod anymore? I do have to say, Frank was going to join us today, but he unfortunately, he's feeling a little under the weather. Apparently good enough to tweet. No, I'm joking. Frank actually was going to join us yesterday. Then he said he'd try to give it a go today. He's not feeling well both days. Obviously, there's a lot of sicknesses going around. So we hope Frank feels better, and he will be joining us soon. We're going to get Frank on more regularly. That's the thing, is I don't like having regular guests. Like, Jeff is the most regular guest we have, but I like talking to interesting people just whenever, right? Like, I don't like locking people in. And I mean, our show's short. Like, if we did a 3-hour show, we'd probably have to do that, where we lock in regular guests. But I like just kind of switching up. Like, we had John Forsland. I like having interesting conversations. And I honestly, one thing I want to do is have more ex-players on. Like, one of my favorite conversations we've ever had on the Canucks Conversation was the one we had with Sammy Salo. And I'd love to have him back on the show. So we'll see. We like to have a wide range of guests on the show. So
Still waiting on that Chris Faber appearance.
you had to bring it up. Chris will join the show eventually. At some point, Chris will be on the show. At some point. Yeah, okay. Let's move on here. Is there anything else you wanted to get to before we close out, Harm? Oh, Marty Natchez. You saw this, I'm sure. Not sure how well he would have worked out here. Saw the J Fresh card had his defensive rating at 0% or something. It was in the red, I know that. I didn't realize he was that bad defensively. Last night against the Islanders has one of the worst, I think it's generous to call it one of the worst reads I've ever seen, because he didn't read anything. One of the worst miscues on defense that I've ever seen through the neutral zone. And we talk about neutral zone defending and picking up a man. JT Miller, Nils Höglander look at this clip in the video room and say, oh my gosh, what is that guy doing? You have to pick up the man here. And for those on the podcast, you aren't able to see it, but it is on Twitter. You can go find it, I'm sure. Martin H just completely loses who he's supposed to pick up through the neutral zone, and then he kind of floats back afterwards when he's the last man back, and just not a good look for Marty Necas on that play.
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to go back and watch Nature's tape since he's gone to Colorado because, I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. That's a bad defensive look, but he's also got 4 points in his first 3 games, and I'm curious to see how he's fitting with the Avs, given the Mikko Rantanen size hole in their lineup.
And people are pointing out, Karn said, did you see Necas on the Lehkonen goal on the zone entry? Canucks could use more of that, but don't know how well Marty Necas would have worked out as long as Rick Tocchet is coaching this team. Okay, someone's asking.
Sorry,
yeah,
we can get to that in a second, but we do have a clip from Down to Earth.
Oh yeah, bring it up.
Which is over on Daily Faceoff. It's about a minute and a half long, just with his interview with Travis Green. So that is now live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. Be sure to go check it out after our show. But we want to give you this little tidbit from former Canucks head coach Travis Green about his time coaching in Vancouver.
Been fired before. I loved working for the Vancouver Canucks. I took it to heart. Coaches grind, and they grind hard. And it felt like I had lived 10 years and almost 5 years in Vancouver in waves, and a lot of good moments. Got a lot of good memories, a lot of great memories. Some harder times, obviously, when you get fired, things aren't going well. And we talked earlier about pressure in a Canadian city, and it does wear on coaches. And you feel it, you know your team feels it. And once I got let go, I didn't know how badly I probably needed a little break than I did once it happened. And it took probably a month, 6 weeks before I started feeling, I guess, normal or better. And then I kind of just took some time and got away from hockey a little bit, and it was nice. Got rejuvenized, re-energized, started to watch a lot of hockey again, started to study the game again, study different teams, different style of play. And, when you love something and you miss it and you have passion for the game, then I started to really miss it, being around it again, and was really looking forward to another opportunity, and was thankful that I got one.
So yeah, full interview, Down to Earth. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Also on Daily Faceoff, Travis Green sat down with our Irfan Gafar. Harm, I ask you this. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm glad he's having success in Ottawa. The Sens are currently in a playoff spot, 65% odds to get in according to Dom's model. They're actually 3rd place in the Atlantic right now. They're not even in a wild card spot. And honestly, given how long the Senators have struggled to get over the hump, and not even having Linus Ullmark at full health, and even in the beginning of the season when he was healthy, he was struggling and was a disappointment for them before getting red hot for 6 weeks. Like, he's overcome a lot of challenges over in Ottawa, and I don't want to hear people saying that Travis Green is a bad NHL head coach, because look at what he's doing in Ottawa. And to me, it just further validates when you look at Green, Boudreau, and Tocchet. These are all coaches who, I'm not going to sit here and say they're in the elite necessarily of top 5, top 10 coaches in the NHL, but they're all accomplished. None of them are bad head coaches. And that just sort of underscores just this idea that this core has had 3 head coaches to figure it out. And you can't just keep blaming the coach when the team continues to falter. At some point, it's on the players themselves.
As much as the players would like you to, you can't just blame the coach every time. 7-2-1 are the Ottawa Senators in their last 10 games, and you touched on it, Harm. They are 3rd in the Atlantic right now. I ask you this about the Ottawa Senators. Will they make the playoffs? 65%. I'm asking the Harm and Dial opinion. Lock it in. Will the Ottawa Senators make the playoffs?
I believe so, yeah. I think I like their odds better than I'm just not a believer in Boston right now.
I'm not a believer in Boston. I'm not a believer in Columbus. And that's what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, they got the Bruins have a -25 goal differential. Like, I know they're technically sitting in a wild card spot right now, but to me, I don't think they're going to make it. The biggest threat for Ottawa is, if in my opinion, if the Rangers pick up some steam and they end up in a situation where Tampa overtakes Ottawa for the third wildcard spot. And now you're in a spot where like a team like the Rangers overtakes the Senators, but I still believe in the Senators to punch their ticket through.
I like it. Let's close it out. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, which is brought to you by, you guessed it, Bet365, proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Okay, I'm not allowed to take Canucks bets, so I'm not going to. Did I win last night? What did I say? I should have taken the Sabres.
You sent us a message to the group chat when the Dallas Stars came back to win. You took Dallas, and they stormed right back to win in overtime.
Yeah, so, and people always say, like, oh, do you actually take the bet? Last night I did. Last night I live bet Dallas comeback. I ride with the quad model. That's what we're calling it now, Harm. I ride with it. And they were down in that game. They were down 3-1 in that game, and I live bet the comeback. They won in overtime. It got really close, but I did live bet the comeback, and I got it. Dallas Stars, let's go. Ride that Stars wagon. Okay. Who do we got here? Kings, Panthers, Wild, Leafs, Flyers, Devils, Canucks, Predators, Penguins, Utah. Ooh, I don't like any of these, but we have to go with an underdog because that's the quad model. That's what we call for. The Penguins have lost 3 straight, and I like them to buck that trend in Utah tonight. Sidney Crosby teams don't lose 4 straight. That doesn't happen. So we are taking the underdog Pittsburgh Penguins at plus 125 odds to beat the Utah Hockey Club tonight. That was our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment is, never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. It must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. Jacob, do we have enough Family Feud responses?
We need a few more. So final reminder, we're going to play Feud tomorrow. If you haven't filled out the survey, please do that, and we should be good to go.
Okay, excellent. Fill out that survey. Hopefully it's still available for you when you check this. If you're listening on podcast, it's in the link in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, it is also in the link in the description. Make sure you hit like, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and please subscribe to the Canucks Army YouTube channel. For now, signing off for my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar. My name is Dave Quadrelli. Thanks so much for this episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.